Hey, welcome back to the job site. I've been tracking this job for some time now, so if you're new here, you might want to go back to the channel and look at some of the earlier videos and see the progress of what's been going on. We have a whole new element to this site. They finally got out of the ground, all the shear walls and all the concrete down below, the slab on grade, and now they've got elevated decks going, and they got a Friday concrete pour. They're going to pour this entire thing on Friday, and so that's going to be great. They're going to go from start to finish. They're going to start about 6 a.m. and however long it takes. The reason they're starting early is it's been cold out here, and so they got to start about 6 in the morning, get the concrete all placed, and it's going to take a little bit longer to set up. They'll probably put some accelerants in it and everything, but still, the surface of it takes a while to get set up so they can put a finish on it, and so hopefully they'll get out here before midnight on Friday night, so we'll see. But I wanted to show you exactly what goes in. Now that they've got this elevated deck built, if you look in the background, I'll get away from the camera here in a minute and zoom in on some of these areas and give you an idea of what's going on. But there's a lot of elements, a lot of components that are contained in the slab and that you may not know about. And we'll point some of those out and why they're important and what they do. But what we're looking at right now is we got rebar in there. We've got Smurf tube. You say, what is Smurf tube? Well, that's all the electrical conduits that are running around. So they run a flexible plastic tubing everywhere that goes different boxes and different components for the electricians. And they'll put all those around in the concrete, and that's what they'll fish all their wires through after the concrete's poured. They'll pull all the wires to lighting. They'll pull all their wires to power boxes and controls and everything else that's in the building. It needs to be distributed. So you look at that closely. All the conduits running around for the electricians. And then you have these things called bangers that the electricians and the plumbers and sprinkler fitters and everyone else has to put in inside the slab so that when the slab's poured, they have a threaded rod attachment underneath the slab down below. Then you see the things that look like little red stacking cups out there. Those are sleeves for the electrical pipes and any plumbing and anything else that needs to go from down below to pop up through. That's what those are for. And once the concrete's poured and the electricians or the plumbers or anyone else has to put a pipe through from one floor to the other, they'll just stick them through those cylinders and that gives them access. So the last thing to look at is those red cables that are going back and forth in a grid pattern, and those are post-tension cables. And what they're designed to do is once the concrete is poured and it hardens up, come Monday, Tuesday of next week, they'll come in with a hydraulic ram. They're anchored at one end. They'll hook it up to the other end, and they'll tension those cables, and those cables all around back and forth. You see them going through the columns and you see them going everywhere, snaking all around in the rebar, but they're in a specific pattern. They're designed and engineered where they're supposed to be. And what they do is if you look at it as a bunch of rubber bands that are just stretched really tight back and forth on both sides of the building, that are just holding the whole structure together and going through the columns and just tying everything together and keeping it nice and structurally sound. So not only do we have concrete and rebar, you have a bunch of cable rubber bands that are just stretched really tight that are wrapping over this whole building, and that's the way they do it going all the way up. And that's why these buildings could move, they could bounce a little bit if there's an earthquake or whatever. Not only do they have the rebar reinforcement, the concrete is strong, but they're all tied together with a bunch of cables that are stressed really tight and holding things together. And that's why these buildings could go up so high and still have some flexibility in case there's a earthquake or something. So that's really a cool design. So those are called post-tension cables. And I'll try to get a shot of them using the ram to pull the cables tight and put some tension on them. And we'll show you what that's all about if I'm able to get out here. So stay tuned. So I'll jump behind the camera and zoom in on a bunch of these components that I've already mentioned, and we'll get a better look at them a little bit more close up and kind of get a good look at the entire deck. See what it looks like before the concrete's poured and appreciate all the work that has to happen. So it's not just building an elevated deck, throwing rebar in and putting concrete in it. There's a lot of work that goes in. Everything's got to be checked, double checked, because once that concrete goes in, it's a little difficult to move things. So there we'll give you kind of a straight shot view of those cables that are going down the slab. So here's a look at some of the components that I was talking about. If you look very closely, you see the orange little pegs that are sticking up from the deck right there. Those are the bangers that they have installed. Those will be embedded in the concrete so that later on when they strip the forms below, the sprinkler fitters and the plumbers and electricians will have a place to screw in their threaded rod, and that way they could hang all their pipes and their brackets and anything else that needs a sheet metal, ductwork, anything that hangs from that. They'll have a little connection right there. So they lay out where all the pipes are going to go up here, put in these hangers exactly where they need to be, and then that way they're all ready to go. So the thing I failed to mention earlier were the chairs, the little plastic things you see that are standing up everywhere, that just supporting, whether it's electrical or supporting cable or rebar or anything that wants to lay on the deck. They try to keep it off the deck, and that way the rebar or the conduit, the Smurf tube or the cables, anywhere that it's laying flat on the deck, they try to elevate them off the deck so that they're contained within the concrete pour itself. So we have the bangers, we have the chairs, and now we have the sleeves, and those are placed everywhere all around this platform, and most of the time they'll be either in a wall or right next to a wall that's being built later on. So the pipes that come up, they'll either be pipes that are contained within the wall, or they're pipes that are exposed inside of an electrical room. Now check out the Smurf tube, which is the electrical conduit, plastic tubing that's running everywhere. So that's something that kind of blends in with the deck itself, but if you take a look at it, it's all over the place, and it's got to go from one electrical box to another, to the lights. Then take a look at the post-tension cables that are laid everywhere in a grid pattern, and they're specific to the design of the building, the structural design. So that's going to be about it for me today. I just wanted to get out here and show you what these concrete decks look like before they're poured, how many components go in here and what it takes to make it happen. And so that way when we see them pour the concrete, you'll see all that go away, and you'll see them out there walking on it a couple days later, and it'll look like, wow, what's the big deal? Well, this is the big deal, and this is what I keep talking about. There's a lot that goes into these buildings, and then all that stuff down below, they'll just pull all that stuff out, stack it, bring it up with a crane, throw it up here, and start building again, and they'll just stack up, and that's how these buildings are built. So that's how it's done. This process that you're looking at right now, just duplicate it and keep going and get a building built. So stay with me, like and subscribe, and tell all your friends, and let the kids watch this stuff. It's kind of interesting. I'm doing this to promote the industry and to show anybody that wants to get into this type of work that here it is, and it's fun, and there's a lot of work out there, and learn a trade, learn some skills, and get to work. So appreciate you watching. Thanks.